Welcome to the Tearing It Up podcast. I'm your host, Taryn. We'll be tearing it up, tearing it down, and tearing it apart, dissecting all things related to those who deviate from the standard. From leaders of their industry to leaders of mediocrity, and maybe a gear review or two thrown in. We shoot the shit and let the conversations flow, so if that's not your style, this may not be for you. Otherwise, listen in. Hope to light a fire in you somehow. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Tearing It Up. I'm really excited, again, as always, every week, but this week extra special because I have my dear friend Natalie on the podcast today, and I'm really excited because she's been on my list since I started this thing for sure to get her on the podcast. Since I met her, have looked up to her in many different ways, in business ways and just personal ways. She's an amazing human being and she's got some amazing things going on right now. So I can't wait to share some of those with you and just share her story. And I am also just very excited to get to see and talk to her because she's all over the place. We're never really in the same place anymore and don't get to talk much or see each other much. So this is a great way to start my early morning. She's 3 hours ahead, so she's a little bit on her way already. But Natalie, where are you right now in the world, physically sitting?
It's actually really interesting that today fell on where I am located in the world, that we decided to do a podcast here because I'm in Puerto Rico, which everything that we are going to talk about in this podcast is literally tied into Puerto Rico. And we'll get into that in a bit, but it's such a special place for me. So it's a really beautiful thing that I'm able to do that today and speak with you while I'm here.
That is amazing. I know that you said, you'd be on the East Coast time zone, but I didn't realize where. And then as you told me this morning and I started doing the intro, I was putting the connections together too, because I already know some of them. So this is pretty serendipitous, the timing. So I'm super excited to dive in. So I met Natalie back in, I think it's 2018, because that's when I started working at Performance Training Center in Truckee. And I had started going through my CPT, my certified personal training course, and she was working at the gym as a personal trainer. So I was working the front desk, going through my certification. And it was actually the timing, right as I finished, she was transitioning out of there. I actually got some of my first clients from her. She passed her clients on to me. But she is just amazing in the gym. I was like, who is this woman? Holy cow. And yeah, that's how we met and just connected on the fitness level. And she was getting into all the Truckee outdoors stuff. And she also is a flight attendant. And I don't remember when you left Truckee around that time, if it was because you were getting back into flying. Was that the case?
Yes, I had quit flying for a little bit because I just felt as if it was fueling my wallet, but not my heart. And so I left for a little bit, and that's how I ended up in Truckee, working with High Fives, which I'm sure we'll get to as well. But that was about the time. And yes, I was asked to do a music tour for a very high profile celebrity and did decide to pick flying back up because I just couldn't say no to that absolutely unique opportunity.
Yeah, even that was amazing to me. Oh my God, that is just something you can't really imagine doing. You hear about people doing it, right? And you're like, but does it really exist? Who really does that? I was like, wow, that's so cool. How did you get into that in the first place, into that private flight attendant?
So just kind of to give you a base, I went to college and, did that whole thing, and not really because I wanted to. It was just more of the oh, that's what you do because that's what society tells you to do. I left, I graduated. I didn't leave. I did graduate. And then ended up moving to Las Vegas. I was really lost. Didn't really know what I was doing with my life. So I had a friend. I was like, "Oh, you should move to Las Vegas." I was like, "Absolutely not." And then somehow ended up moving to Las Vegas after being there for a week. And I just, after 6 years of doing that, I just felt like I didn't want to be a 40-year-old cocktail waitress working, at South Point Casino. Uh, so I knew that there was something, better out there for me, and it was just a natural transition. But again, as much as I love it, it still never really offered me that sense of purpose, passion. Like I still was constantly longing for something bigger.
Yeah, and well, that's exactly what we'll get into is how or why I guess you do all these other amazing things that you do with fundraisers and just outdoor pursuits and whatnot. And before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about your background, like in fitness and whatnot too, and then leading into the outdoors. And you're from Florida.
Yes.
Yep. And so yeah, so is that where you went to school too? Is that where you
I
went to
went to
college?
University of Florida in Orlando. Yes.
Okay. But so growing up in Florida, you and the fam, how did you first discover fitness? Did personal training come like during the before flying or at the same time or before?
So basically, physical fitness was kind of a trauma release for me, I
Mhm.
think. I didn't know it at the time, but I had a lot of bad stuff kind of happen growing up. There was definitely a sexual abuse, especially around the age of 15. I went to a private school and had some pretty traumatic things happen. And then I also, at the age of, I believe it was 16, had a boyfriend die who was heavily involved in drugs. And I was going down that path as well. And we actually got in a car accident and I almost went through the windshield. And I looked at him and I said, "Unless you change your lifestyle, I don't ever want to see you again." And he died the next day. And
Oh
had
my
I
God.
not had, yeah, I think I would have died as well. So that kind of was a big transition point in my life. And I think around that point, I had found weightlifting. It was a class offered in high school, and it was mostly boys. And I was just absolutely enthralled with it. I loved it. And again, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that me throwing myself into that gave me a sense of purpose, helped heal, the things that I was going through mentally. Because you have to be present when you're weightlifting.
Hmm.
I mean, granted, you've got those people sitting around on their phone at the gym the whole time, but they're not really there for the right purpose, right?
Hmm.
But so after it was right after college is when I started doing personal training because again, I was just grasping for anything that would give me a sense of purpose. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I just knew that physical fitness had saved me time and time again. And so I knew that somehow, some way, tying physical fitness into something was going to be the way that I eventually healed, but
Hmm.
also found purpose and passion in life.
Well, and then becoming a trainer, like this is how you found, some healing and a way to be present and all that, and being able to give that to other people by being a trainer. I think that is a lot of people, yeah, as trainers, they come to you because they want to, especially women, like want to lose weight. I think these days it is getting a little more popular that women are coming to work out to gain strength and not just lose weight, but some people are just they're looking for something too, or even if that initial reason or kick in the butt is to lose weight or gain strength or whatever, they can find that kind of solace in it, and it can be that thing that is a form of therapy that they didn't even know they were looking for and needed. And so being able to give that to other people, I know that that's something we connect on. Being trainers is just like, we find so much more out of this than just like the aesthetics it can bring. And so finding that passion at such a young age too, at 16, I don't think I realized that. I didn't know the story of your boyfriend, and that I knew that you'd gone through trauma in life and whatnot, but that you found weightlifting at 16, like that's even more special, because at that time too, you really wasn't a lot of women, like you said, in this space, and it wasn't that welcomed. It was like, yeah, there was aerobics style, like hit stuff, spin stuff, but not a lot of girls in high school like lifting weights. Like we had to go through the weight room, but no, the teachers didn't pay much attention, and I wasn't like super enthralled by that. I just liked to be active. Did you play sports too, or was it just the weightlifting that you
I
found?
actually did not, and I will confess I really liked the Cindy Crawford workout videos growing up. um, but no, I actually did ballet until the age of 15, which is hilarious because that's a very girly girl sport, I feel like. And I am not girly girl, but I did love it. I just got to a point where I didn't feel like I was going to be good enough to pursue it professionally.
Mm.
So, unfortunately, I stopped. But I have found a different form of dancing through a yoga certification called Goddess Yoga. And that has really brought me back to life on that front, which is pretty cool.
That is really cool. I didn't know that either. I didn't know you did ballet for that long, or for like at all. So that's amazing. Well, so you've always had, this connection to movement, but like I said, just became more of a trauma response later than in your life. And I do want to talk about your family and your brother, because I know that that is something you guys connected on. You and your brother was working out. So how did that all start? You guys doing that together and doing these like getting into the CrossFit style workouts and stuff. What did you bring him into that, or did he do it on his own too? And then you guys both were like, yeah, let's do it together.
Frankie, my little brother, he was 2 years younger than me, and he definitely was the more disciplined one of all of us. Like I said, I kind of have always tended to be the free spirit and the wild child. Frankie was not that. He was the picture. I'm sure my parents were very happy when he came along after going through the hell that was me. Um, but I don't really, to be honest, remember like exactly how it came about. I just know that we both were super into it. And I remember Thanksgivings and Christmases, and we would literally, first thing we would do was wake up and just work out. And we loved it. The harder, the better. I mean, we would just push ourselves to the max, and it was just such a beautiful thing to be able to share that passion with someone else.
Oh man, that's so cool. I loved being able to share wrestling with my brother. We were 4 years apart, so at a young age, it can be a kind of a lot, like he's a senior in high school, I'm a freshman. There was a lot of differences in life going on, but it was still something that we shared and could connect on. And I just loved having it. So I know having something with your sibling, especially like being so close to your sibling, it's when I hear people talk about, like, of course you still get in sibling fights, I'm sure, but I know some people who are just not close with their siblings. I'm like, that sucks, like that's just a bummer that that's how the cards fell for you, because having a sibling that you can be close to and connect with is an amazing gift. And I know that that's, again, where so much of your purpose now stems. So I don't want to feel like we're skipping super far ahead or anything. So fill in wherever you feel you need to or whatnot. But what we're getting to today is this massive climb that Natalie's going to do. But leading up to that, before we get to the Denali climb coming up here, you have thrown yourself into a bunch of different fundraisers that all have some kind of, you're doing something crazy physical to like raise this money. Like I know you and I did one together where we're doing 500 burpees a day to raise money to bring some veterans to Tahoe for a weekend. And I want you to share with everybody how you got started in giving back to the military community, and all that.
So, for those who don't know me and are listening, the reason that obviously you and I are talking about everything is because I lost my little brother in 2011 on July 16th to an IED. And it was his first tour in the Army. He had enlisted because he wanted to pay off a debt to Full Sail University, which is a college in Florida. It's super expensive, a very difficult school. And he just decided that in order to pay his college tuition off, he would enlist, serve his time. He graduated at the top of his class. And he graduated with a Distinguished Honor Graduate Award. He was an expert marksman. They actually wanted to bring him in as a higher ranking officer, but because he wanted to earn the respect of his peers, he decided to stay at a lower rank.
Wow.
They were in a Humvee, and one of the gentlemen he was with actually ended up giving wrong coordinates, and they ended up in a minefield. And so that was, obviously something that was really, really difficult in my life. He was my only brother. And I just remember it was a very hard time in my life. And for a long time, I numbed all of my feelings. I completely disassociated. Even from the other people looking at my life, they wouldn't have been able to tell. I was definitely one of those people that numbed everything, but I did it very functionally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm sure everybody looked at my life for a long time and been like, oh, she's got it together. When in reality, I really didn't, because I really wasn't healing. I was pushing it away. And I would say up until about last year is when I finally decided that it was really time to make some changes in my life. But anyways, going back, when he died, I decided, I knew my life was going down a downward spiral, and I
Mm-hmm.
decided to kind of pull myself out of it by signing up for a fitness competition. And so I did a couple bikini competitions, and it was cool, and it kept me on the right path. It kept me sober, and I liked it, but I knew it wasn't a long-term goal for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, what can I do that will give me, again, some kind of purpose in my life? And I felt like helping others was the way to do that. And, my parents are super awesome, and I'm so happy that I'm close with them, like you touched upon previously. I can't imagine not having a such an emboldened, like, family life. Like, we are
Mm-hmm.
so close, we're so tied together. My parents are my best friends, and it breaks my heart when people don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I digress.
It's all
So
good.
I wanted to just kind of figure out something where I could bring service to others, but in a way that suited me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came up with Heroes Homage. I had a friend, Mason, who introduced me to Adaptive Training Foundation, which is a organization out of Texas, and their mission is to empower those with disabilities to transform their lives through exercise and community. And I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. So I decided to raise $4,500, ended up raising $5,700, but to sponsor an athlete, a military athlete, for a 9-week program. And basically what happened was I decided to run 5 miles every day with my brother's 25-pound weighted vest. And that is right around the time that I threw everything in my Jeep. I quit my job being a private flight attendant. Everybody thought I was crazy because they're like, what are you doing? Like, heaven forbid you do this I think I was like somewhere in my 30s, young 30s. I'm probably mid 30s even. And, so everybody was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you're leaving the stability,
Yeah.
because heaven forbid you do that. Heaven forbid you chase your passions and your dreams.
At any age.
And yeah, I ended up going over to Texas, but eventually found High Five's organization. Roy Tuscany is a dear friend, and he's amazing. And I'm so glad that he offered me a position there, working with adaptive athletes. And basically what they do is they help transition them back into the sport that they were injured in. Usually it's spinal cord injuries. But there's, whatever they were injured in, we help rehabilitate them through physical therapy to get back into that sport that they were doing, that they love, to find a reason to live again. And I just felt like that was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I was introduced to so many amazing people there, yourself included.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to work with a lot of veterans, and, it was just such a beautiful time in my life. But as you touched on, I did decide to go back into flying. But I also wanted to continue the Heroes Homage. I am now working on my 6th fundraiser. I did 2 other ones for Wreaths Across America, which is where we go every year during Christmas and we lay wreaths on our fallen's graves in order to honor them. You and I did the H2O Heroes, and everything is always based on me just pushing myself to the limit, And I want to say thank you too for helping me with the H2O Heroes. That was, such a fun event.
It was.
It was so much fun, and, such a great healing modality. With my retreats, I definitely try to implement the thought of, not the thought, but basically the principles of how much, nature and physical
Mm-hmm.
fitness can really, truly offer such great healing. Because
Yeah.
I know that, it's just time and time again. It's those 2 things have just brought me such a sense of peace when my anxiety comes on, when I feel like I have nothing left to give. Even last night, I didn't feel well. And I said, okay, we're not going to sit in the hotel room and feel sorry for ourselves. Even if you just go walk on the beach, like, let's
Mm-hmm.
do that. And it ended up running like 5 miles. And I felt
Wow.
so good after. But it's so easy to, slip into that,
Mm-hmm.
woe is me, my life sucks, and it doesn't, but you get into these little mindsets and these ruts where it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit difficult. But so with all of that being said, yes, I decided to, this last year, decided to climb Denali. And I guess the reason that I was really drawn to it is because, unlike a lot of the other mountains, you use a Sherpa on another mountain, or you might use a mule to help you. Denali is
Like
completely,
Everest and whatnot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's not like that. And I'm not diminishing climbing
Mm-hmm.
Everest, but you have
Of
a lot of
course.
help.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people that have climbed Everest say Denali is actually harder
Well,
because of, go ahead.
with I don't know for sure, and you're way more like immersed in that community, which I want to talk about too, how you even found climbing, but I'll let you finish telling what you're going to do. But can you even like climb Everest without a a guide anyways? Like, don't you have to have guides for some of these big climbs these days anyways? So like you just don't I'm sure like some crazy experienced mountaineers or whatnot can go do it, but for the most part, if you're just a average person, like you can't just go up there alone, can you? You got to have all the go through the guides for permits and stuff and whatnot. So it's like you don't even really have a choice to try to climb it alone.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who do Everest by themselves, but as you just touched upon, if you are just a normal individual, unless you have put in, years of training and, you know, going through the permits and what you need and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not for just the normal person who decides they're going to start mountaineering and climb Mount Everest.
Yeah, so which is crazy then to, like you mentioned, Denali is completely self-sufficient, meaning that as kind of an average person, like obviously we're not saying go do this like untrained, because we will talk about Natalie's training. She's very versed in training for things. She doesn't just it may seem that she like willy-nilly decided she's going to take a new hobby on, but she does not take them lightly. Like she throws herself in there, learns everything, trains her ass off, finds people that she connects with that are in those communities, and learns everything. So that is something that I look up to so much about you. But so that is, though, Denali, something that you can go like do this huge, massive climb after training and learning all these things, and not necessarily having to have this Sherpa or a mule or anything like that. You're carrying the load on your back and you are doing it all.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's like you start off with, for a woman, like basically you're carrying your own body weight because you have your pack and then you also have a sled that you have to pull. So a lot of people don't know about that. I mean,
mm-hmm.
it offers a whole different level of difficulty just because the sled, it's just not fun. I've never hated something so much. I hate it. I hate it. Get me started. I'll start.
Oh my god. Well, before, so do you can either go into letting people know like what the climb is, like the fundraiser, or we can talk first too about how you even found mountaineering. Let's do that. How the heck did this happen? So you've gone from Florida to Vegas, being a flight attendant, finding the adaptive programs, and Truckee, and then back to flying. Where did climbing and mountaineering and all the outdoor pursuits come in?
So it's kind of interesting that you ask that because you were a big part of that. I always love telling this story because I'm like, you and I went to, I think you had invited me. It was a retreat in Moab. And this is like kind of like the very baseline of where everything started. Cause like, dude, I lived in Florida. Like you don't do anything. Like you go to Disney World and you go to the beach and that's it. And I like going to the beach. So I'm not, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you and I went to, I believe it was She Jumps. Was it
And
She Jumps?
she's dope too.
She's dope too. That's right. She Jumps is a different one out of Washington.
Yep.
And she's dope too. And that was just such an incredible experience. And I remember like you were like staying in your truck and I stayed in my Jeep and I was like, this is a thing? Like, this is amazing. I believe like people do this. It was just like my mind was literally blown, right? Like, and I think that was kind of the gateway to, everything that progressively happened. And it kind of was like on a slower pace where, COVID happened and then I got out of flying again. It was kind of a forced thing, but it was also, I mean, I don't enjoy the fact that people died during that time, but for me, it was one of the, most liberating times of my life just because I bought a van. I really did some soul searching. I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a long time. I explored that area. I fell in love. with the mountains. And I think that that's when I really, I mean, well, that is not, I think, that is, I decided to climb. A girlfriend who was like, I'm going to go climb Shasta. And I was like, oh my God, I've been wanting to climb Shasta too. And I was in Idaho at the time, actually, which is where I live now. And I drove like in a day down to California and we climbed Mount Shasta. And that was kind of like my intro to mountaineering. And then I think like 2 weeks later, we attempted Hood, but we started a little bit late. So we weren't able to get all the way to the summit. We were super close. And then I climbed Mount Baker as well. And that was all in 2020. Work started again. And you know how that goes sometimes.
Yeah.
We just got completely enveloped, especially me, or I think people with trauma in general, because we tend to throw ourselves sometimes into, I tend to get completely, immersed in my work versus, oh, maybe I should slow down a little bit and like work on my healing. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to work my little ass off and not think about all the things that I need to think about. So that kind of happened. And I didn't do anything climbing wise for literally 3 years.
Wow.
I started a new job. Yeah. I completely like, I was doing hiking and stuff, but no mountaineering. Like, it completely fell off the map for me.
Time flies. Like,
Um,
just
and
following you during the time, it's it just doesn't seem like you took that much time off. Like, and I
yeah,
mean, again, that's what's also crazy is like 3 years isn't that long. But like and sometimes when you think about it, it's like, holy crap, like, but it's just, how does it go so fast? Especially since 2020, I feel like every year has just been a crazy blur, but I hadn't realized you took that much time off. I also, not to like cut you off and go way back, but I have to say, I don't think I knew at the time that you came to And She's Dope Too with me that was like the very beginnings of your kind of like outdoor, like, let me camp in my car and try all these activities. I mean, I knew it was your first time like really trying mountain biking, and I think you did some climbing too there, right? Like rock climbing.
I did some climbing. And I think the other workshop that I was like, whoa, was trail running. Like that one was just, I mean, again, mind blown. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I guess I had done it, but I never really thought of it as an actual sport.
Yeah.
Um, and, like signing up for marathons and stuff. Like I definitely foresee a lot more of that in my future for sure.
That's amazing. Okay, so anyway, sorry to kind of go back there, but now you've taken 3 years off of climbing, and all of a sudden, what happens that you're like, whoa, what's the realization point that you're like, I haven't done this and I need to get back to this?
So this was last year, and I had a friend who just invited me to climb Mount Hood, and I was like, sure. We got stuck in a whiteout. And it's so crazy how the universe works because there was one other kid up there, and he is just this badass climber, mountaineer, self-taught, and just a super rad dude. And I didn't have like the proper gear at all, girl. Like oh my God, it makes me laugh when I think about like the stuff that I was wearing up there. Like no idea about layering systems. Like I'm pretty sure it's snowboard pants on, and this kid was, kind of just waiting out the storm with us. And he's like, are you cold? Because I'm like pretty sure my teeth were chattering. And ended up that he found me on Instagram, and he ended up becoming like someone who's really been a great mentor for me, and a great climbing partner, and has pushed me to limits that I didn't think were possible for myself. Because I guess one thing that I should also touch upon is the fact that I'm really like scared of heights, like not a little bit, like I will start shaking kind of deal. And it's funny because anybody that climbs with me, except for people that like really climb with me that really know me, they're like, "Oh, you seemed fine." I'm like, "Yeah, it's
Well,
just
like you
something that I
said,
have to work through."
yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, just kind of that high functioning, like block out kind of numbing, right? It's like you are really good at masking what's actually going on, especially well when you're in a situation like climbing and mountaineering. You can't really give into that because it's gonna, you need to be focused on what's happening. You can't give into that fear because then something bad will happen. So you have to do everything possible to like shove that down and actually be safe. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's easier to do, but there's just no choice to do it. It's not like you're standing over a
Yeah,
balcony and you can be like, "Oh my god, I'm going to go back inside now."
yeah. And what you also just touched upon is like there's no room for error.
Mhm.
And I think that that is another thing that really attracts me to it is the fact that as someone who has always had anxiety, even before my brother, it's just kind of a baseline for me. It's something, unfortunately, that I've always dealt with. Obviously, the death of my brother dramatically increased it. But with that being said, for people with anxiety, be learning to be present in the moment is so huge, as well as I'm reading a book right now. It's called Smart or Smart Women with ADHD or something around that line. But it's amazing because she talks about how women with ADD or ADHD should choose hobbies that challenge them, because again it forces us to be present. And and especially in this day and age where we're so connected to technology, it's such a beautiful experience to step away from that. In my case, it'll be for 21 days on Mount Denali, and I love that. I can't wait.
Yeah. You'll have to send me the name of that book or a link because I would love to link that and read it
Absolutely.
myself because I don't know. I definitely have like trend towards that. Like hard to keep my attention, hard to be present. That's for sure. I'm constantly thinking of a million things, and it's interesting talking. I love having these conversations with people because a lot of the people we have on the podcast, I mean, you're a good friend of mine. Like I already know so much about you, but it's in these conversations and moments that I'm like, I have some kind of connection or similar, hobby or whatever it is. But the hearing the way other people get into it or connect to it makes me look into, oh, maybe that is actually where this is rooted in. And I never looked at it that way. I obviously know working out when I'm in a tough workout, like I love that I'm not thinking about the million other things, but it's as soon as I'm done with it that it all just comes flooding back. So how like finding a way to maintain those quiet spaces outside of those 1 hour or 2 hour whatever pursuits, because we can't throw our like but or work. When you mentioned that, I was like, just throwing yourself into the grind, like, huh, that could have something to do with why I constantly have 5 different jobs or something, is because if I'm busy, like it kind of blocks other things out. So, and Amber and I on the podcast, we talk about that kind of stuff often with different guests and just with ourselves. So I think a lot of our listeners would definitely get something out of this book. So that I will be picking that up for sure. But anywho, again, digressing. This is what happens all the time here. And also, um, your friend who you found on Hood, is it Hans or something on Instagram? Okay, cool. I like to kind of putting a somewhat of a face to a name, just a story to the name or something. I always kind of wondered. I see you doing a lot of climbing and things with them, and I wondered, like, how did this person come about? That's what I'm saying, is you just put yourself out there so much. You find something, you meet all these people, and then all the traveling you've done since 2020. I mean, I I don't feel like I put myself out there. Other people would disagree, but not in the ways that you do, where if I kind of go do something, I feel like I stay solo. Like if I'm going to go camp on the coast or something, like I don't do that much at all anymore, but I would just like take my dog, spend the night or something. And I'd be like, you go out and all of a sudden, you're going to spend 1 or 2 days. Now you have like a new best friend and you're there for 3 months. And I'm just like, I love it so much that you just connect with people and make these real connections with them. And it seems that, again, you went through so many things that I'm sure allowed you to kind of just become this and for like let go of certain things that were maybe holding you back in the past, that now you're just like, what, there's no time to waste, and this person's amazing, I have to know them, I'm going to go talk to them, and we're going to become friends and I am going to learn from them. I just love that so much about you.
I appreciate that, Taryn. And I think a lot of it also has come from a place where for a long time I did self-isolate. Again, it was me masking and numbing my hurt and my pain. And now, because for so long I was so lonely, and a lot of people probably, again, would not know that about me, but and also this ties in with the anxiety, or even last night, like I didn't want to leave my hotel room because my anxiety was just like, oh my God, absolutely overwhelming. I mean, I literally was like staring out the window being like, Natalie, the beach is across the street. Get up and get out. And our mind can play tricks on us if we allow ourselves to for that to happen. And once again, as I touched on earlier, it's like I got out and I started like smiling at people and people were smiling back, and it lights you up. Like I'm like, wow, there are good people in the world. There are beautiful people, there are happy people, and it literally brought me this insane sense of joy and peace that I would not have had I stayed in my hotel room. Mm-hmm. And I didn't meet anybody, but just again, exchanging eye contact and smiles with people, it brought me such peace. And I think that because, again, I was lonely for so many years and I allowed myself to self-isolate so much. Now I really am trying to fill, I think, a void that I had for so many, many years because I felt so lonely. And now I'm just like, I want to meet all the people.
Yeah. Well,
beautiful experiences. Like I love listening to people's stories, mm-hmm. It makes you have a different appreciation for your life as well.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, just hearing other people's perspectives, it can make you appreciate things that you do have so much more that you might take for granted. And two, it could make you realize, just make these connections that maybe you hadn't made before that can help your own just healing or moving on, that in a very simple way of just like, oh, I didn't look at it that way before. And it can answer a lot of questions, and just, it's that human connection that is not as prevalent as it used to be because so many things are across screens. Look at this right now. It's across the screen. But I am also so happy to be able to have this, because without this technology and having this, it'd be even harder. It would be just a phone call, which is still great too. But I mean, there's still nothing, like Amber always says to my co-hosts, like, nothing better than the in-person. And even though last night, for instance, you weren't necessarily like talking to people or, out there to meet a new friend, you're still around the people. Like that energy is still like actually physically like coming in. The energy exchange is happening. So that in itself can be just huge. And even just going outside, if you were alone and didn't see anybody, like if I went out on a walk at my place and didn't see a soul, even just the animals around, or nature in itself, like you said too back a while ago talking about H2O heroes, like the nature part of healing. And so I think that it's amazing that in this upcoming fundraiser with Denali, and you're connecting it sounds like your fundraiser started out with physical fitness, and now they somewhere transformed to the physical fitness but outside because of the healing for both of them. And that's exactly what Denali will obviously be doing, an insane physical pursuit, but in the mountains where this other kind of connection is I think very rare to have the mountain connection for sure, especially something like Denali. So I'm excited for you to do this and to hear all about it, because I think this is going to be just such a huge life altering thing too, of just learning so much more about yourself. So what is the basis for the fundraiser for this climb?
So last year is kind of when I was, looking around at for potentially climbing a larger mountain. Last year I did Rainier, I did Baker, I did, Hood quite a few times. So I was doing all of these like smaller mountains, and I was just at that point looking for a larger challenge. And again, Denali, for some reason, just completely stuck out to me. So I signed up and then kind of just put that away for a little bit. uh, I it's hard doing fundraising stuff because you really have to put yourself out there. You constantly begging people for money, pestering people. And I mean, you said you don't really like putting yourself out there, or you feel like you don't, even though I also beg to differ. But like you said, we see ourselves in different ways than other people see us, right? Um, so, I had said last year that I was going to do a fundraiser, and then I signed up for Denali, and crickets. Like, I was just like, oh my God, I just can't do it right now. But it takes a lot of mental strength. And I wasn't in a place where I could do that. And I have found as I grow older, I listen to myself, I listen to my body, I listen, you know, if it's something that I just feel like in my gut, like this is just not the right timing for it, and it's just not. And, I was having a lot of mental health issues. I experienced seasonal depression for the first time. I've been having some health issues, which after Denali I will speak upon. But I don't want to jinx anything. We're just
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
roll with it. Is what it is right now. There's nothing I can do about it. So with that being said, I knew that I had to, I had, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, right? So I said I was going to do the fundraiser for Denali, and I wanted to make it a lot more money. And I think eventually I will get to a point where, I'm raising, I'd love to do triple digits. But right now, I knew in my heart of hearts to just stay on the smaller end. And I mean, 10,000 is still like a hefty goal, um, you know, and I'm about 8,000. I've got about 8,000 right now. I'd love to be able to go over, but I just wanted to tie it with something larger. And so I decided that I am going to be hosting a retreat for probably 4 women, Gold Star sisters. And I wanted to be able to climb Denali and also speak upon Gold Star sisters, because most people, civilian as well as military personnel, have no idea what the term Gold Star means. And Gold Star is basically someone who has lost a loved one in the line of duty. So for this climb, though, I really wanted to focus on women because we're a minority. So not only is Gold Star something that a lot of people have no idea what that term means, but what about a Gold Star sister? And I'm so happy that we do have so many resources for our veterans, for our active duty. But literally, what about the people like me who lose someone super close to them? And then it's like, well, what do I do? Like, where do I go? There's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of resources for us whatsoever. I mean, you can Google it, and there's very, very limited. And one of the top ones that comes up is actually my mom's organization, Gold Star Awareness. And she's constantly doing things for Gold Star families, raising money. And she has definitely been in it. Her and my father have definitely been inspirations in my life. But then, like I said, I wanted to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And physical fitness and now nature have really propelled me into this beautiful state of lofty goals. And, this is definitely just my first one. Like, I know that there is a lot more, and it has brought me a sense of healing, and it keeps me on a straight and narrow and gives me the purpose and the passion that I've been looking for a long, long time. But with that being said, it also took me, like I said, last year is when I finally was like, maybe I need to get a therapist. And I had seen one before, but it was a military therapist, and she was great. But like, I found someone who I've really connected with. We do a lot of EMDR sessions.
Mm.
I started seeing a psychotherapist. I've been working on healing my nervous system. And these are just things that, again, I was constantly kind of procrastinating on. Like, I knew I needed to do it. I
Mm-hmm.
knew I had work, but I didn't want to because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And
Or
by no
fun.
means,
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, you're basically just like ripping off a Band-Aid that you
Mm-hmm.
put on
Absolutely.
yourself, And so it took me 40 years to decide that, not 40, my brother died at, I was 27. So what, 13 years to be able to say, okay, maybe instead of like reaching for a bottle of wine, I need to reach for the phone and call my
Mm-hmm.
therapist or read a book. It's just, or work my ass off. Like, let's slow down. Like, there's so many different modalities that are offered nowadays to keep us from doing what we really should do, like scrolling. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many different, we all have addictions, we all have our own issues. It's our choice. We all have different ones, but I think that it comes to a point where it's like shit or get off the pot. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to look at my life when I'm 90 and be like, I never did the things that I knew that I should. And you know what? The shit that like you participated in that aren't healthy for you, it's always going to be there. So like, why don't you just try to say, hey, for 6 months or a year, I'm going to try something different and let's see how that works. And if it doesn't work for you, you can always go back to the freaking shit you were doing before.
Yeah.
And but I can't rightfully live my life knowing that at 90 years old, I never tried to be different or better.
I love that. And that's exactly, again, something we talk about often is just like trying. And in our last episode last week, we kind of touched on if there's something kind of in your mind that is just not going away, whether it's a new hobby, an outdoor pursuit, a career change or something, but it's just always, always on your mind. That's just kind of a sign to give it a try at least. Like, obviously make smart choices in your life and make sure you're in a place that you can do this. You have the capacity for it. It's not just a stupid, totally dumb, gonna mess everything up move. Maybe it is, but like weigh out your options there. But you got to figure out a way if there's that thing that's not going away to give it at least a try, and then whether like, hey, did I like that? Did I enjoy that? Did that work out? It might be like, yeah, no, not for me. Or it could be the thing that is the catalyst to a completely different life. So it's just give it a try. Just try it. Like you said, you can always go back to what you had. So would you rather have the regret at 90 that you never did it? And everyone does things in their own time too. Like you said, you started these pursuits quote unquote later in life versus what society says. Like it was in your 30s, maybe mid 30s, that you packed up and moved like across the country, and that was looked at as like, that's crazy. I mean, starting mountaineering in your like later 30s is like, that's crazy, but it's not at all. You can do anything you want anytime, and that's still going to be much better than having the regret of never ever trying. Sure, you might go through this time that you're like, sure, wish I would have done that in my 20s, but like whatever, you got to where you were, and that's just the way it was when it was supposed to happen, that you did it then, and you can't think about that. At least you fucking did it, and that's much better than not.
Amen, sister.
Yeah, so your climb's at the end of this month.
I start May 19th.
Oh my god, so when this podcast is live, when you all will be listening to this, is like May 9th, I think. And so it'll be 10 days until Natalie's out climbing. The fundraiser link is in the show notes. So if you can help her, it's for equipment, it's for getting these women to the retreat that she's planning after her climb for the Gold Star sisters and veterans. So make sure you give that a look. And if you can, obviously donate. I just cannot wait to see you take this on and to hear all about it after. And I know that this might be going back a little bit, but I think it's something I really want to talk about. And I think this is important to you, the connection that we brought up in the beginning of you being in Puerto Rico right now, and how that kind of makes this whole conversation full circle.
Yeah, so my little brother came here and taught himself how to surf. And, a lot of the videos that we have are GoPro videos of him on his surfboard. And when he died, I actually decided to come down here, and I took lessons from the same guy who Frankie kind of had picked up some lessons from. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to know that I have surfed at the same spots that my brother surfed at, and, gone to places that brought him life. And it just gives me that connection to him, because he might not be here on earth, but his spirit is here with me. And so it's pretty cool that we got to do this today while I'm in Puerto Rico. It's just, I feel like I'm honoring him, and it makes me really happy.
I love that so much. It makes me like, I got to hold back the choke up the tears. That is, again, just like a serendipitous thing that this conversation about, it stemmed from, I wanted to get the word out there about your Denali climb, the fundraiser. And I know that all of that stems from the loss of your brother. And yeah, the fact that you're there in Puerto Rico, where this connection to him is so close to you and important, I was like, wow, like that hits the heartstrings for sure. But Natalie, I am so happy that I finally got to have this conversation with you, to share with the people all the amazing things that you're doing. And like I said, especially this huge climb coming up, and to just bring awareness to Gold Star families, Gold Star sisters, especially. You hear about, obviously it's so terrible to lose anyone in your family, but you do hear more often, I feel, about parents losing a child. I cannot imagine at all, but as a sibling, especially being so close to one, it's like, what resources do I have, especially your only one? Like I think that gets lost in the phrase a lot too, the sibling connection and the loss there, and how you can cope and deal with that. So the fact that you're focusing on the Gold Star sisters and taking them out also into the wilderness, doing this retreat with them, potentially giving these women an experience they've never had before, to the outdoors. Like, again, full circle, kind of where you came from, of not having this and having someone else kind of get you out there. Being able to give that back is just amazing. And I'm just so proud of you. I love you.
Karen, I love you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, before we sign off here, let folks know where they can find you. Again, everything will be linked in the show notes, but best place to connect, whether Instagram, any website links, or anything like that.
Yeah, so as of right now, basically just Instagram. I'm going to be working on building a website, but my Instagram is Diary of an Overweight Suitcase.
I love it. I love that name so much. So that'll be linked in the show notes, the GoFundMe, and you can bet your bottom dollar we will be tracking Natalie down when she's done with her climb to hear all about it. How long will the climb take? Like from travel time like to Alaska, and when you think you might be back from there?
So I leave May 16th or 17th. I haven't really decided the date on that, but and then we are up there for 21 days. It's usually about a 17 to 18-day climb. I will send you also, there will be a link so you can track us live. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I will make sure to send you that. But it's about a 17, 18-day climb normally, and then you have to factor in the weather days because the mountain doesn't care if you're trying to climb or not.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll hopefully be down on June the 8th. But again, that's weather dependent because people get stuck trying to come out of base camp to go to Talkeetna all the time. So
Oh, wow.
hopefully that doesn't happen because I am supposed to go to Key West with my parents afterwards. So I am not going to be a happy camper stuck in a tent versus in Key West. But,
Yeah.
you know, the risk that you have to take. So,
Wow. Almost 3 weeks on
yeah.
the mountain. Wow. That is crazy. Well, I can't wait to get that tracking link. We will definitely be posting that and following that along for sure. All right, Natalie, thank you so much again. And thank you everyone out there listening. If you want to connect with Natalie, find the links in the show notes. You can always reach out to us directly at the podcast. If there's anything else you want to know or hear or find out how you can get more involved with her future fundraisers in this fundraiser. And for now, we will talk to you all next week. Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode and would do us a huge favor, since we don't have any sponsors or anything like that, and would rate and review us on whatever platform it is you use, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is. And if you're listening and downloading just through the website, tearingituppodcast.com, leave comments. We'll definitely engage back with you. And on social media right now, we're just on Instagram. Tearing It Up Podcast is the handle. Like the post, share the post, comment on the post, whatever it is you got. Show us your love so we just stay relevant and show up in the rankings at all. So again, rate and review, please. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.